to. You don't have an option. You have to stand up, speak up, act up.
Once considered Hollywood's untouchable icon, elegant, disciplined, and always above the drama, Meryl Streep had never shown a single crack in her composure, nor a hint of personal grudges. But at 76, she finally broke. In a rare confession, Streep admitted there were actors she couldn't just dislike. She hated them. And when the names came out, Hollywood was shaken to its core. These weren't minor figures or petty rivals. They were true legends, the very people audiences believed Streep held the deepest respect for. What stunned everyone even more was the way she exposed them one by one with brutal honesty. And once you hear the reasons, you'll never look at those collaborations the same way again. The first name on that list was Kevin Kline, her on-screen lover in the masterpiece Sophie's Choice, 1982. On screen, they were the perfect couple, their performances so emotionally intertwined that audiences believed they were destined for each other. But behind the camera, things couldn't have been more different. During rehearsals, the atmosphere between them was tense, almost unbearable. Meryl once admitted it was one of the most exhausting experiences of her career, not because of the role itself, but because of the co-star she simply couldn't stand. Meryl Streep spent months preparing for her role in Sophie's Choice. She immersed herself in Holocaust survivor testimonies, learned both Polish and German, and carefully pieced together every fragile layer of Sophie's shattered psyche. Kevin Kline, her co-star, was her complete opposite. He thrived on instinct, favoring improvisation, spontaneity, and emotion over meticulous research or structured preparation. That difference, instead of balancing the film, turned the set into a silent battlefield. Crew members still recall a tense rehearsal where Kline asked her, "Are you sure the audience will care more about your accent than what she's feeling?" It might have sounded casual, but to Meryl, it was an attack on the very heart of her craft. To her, Sophie's trembling voice wasn't just a performance choice, it was part of her trauma, a reflection of loss, fear, and survival. For Kline to dismiss that meant denying Sophie's very truth. And when the film was over, he made it worse. In an interview, Kline described her approach as too academic. Perhaps he thought it harmless, but to Streep, who had given everything to that role, it was deeply insulting. From then on, they never worked together again. At award shows, Meryl was polite, but the distance between them was unmistakable. And so, Kevin Kline, the man who helped create one of Streep's greatest performances, became the first name on her unspoken blacklist. But that was only the beginning. Because the next name, Jeremy Irons, would send an even colder chill through Hollywood. If Kevin Kline was a wound that never healed, Jeremy Irons was a scar that burned deeper with time. On paper, they seemed like a dream pairing, two masters of their craft, classically trained, admired for their artistry. But once the cameras stopped rolling, their so-called collaboration revealed a clash of two opposing souls. Irons approached acting like sculpting marble, precise, elegant, perfectly controlled. Streep, on the other hand, tore into her characters with raw empathy, building them from the ground up through pain, history, and lived emotion. What began as a professional difference soon curdled into mutual disdain. And if you think Kevin Kline was the only one Meryl Streep truly despised, wait until you hear what happened with Jeremy Irons, where coldness crossed the line from art into something far more personal. One rehearsal between Meryl Streep and Jeremy Irons reportedly turned so tense that the air in the room felt frozen. It all began when Irons casually dismissed her accent work, calling it technical showmanship rather than real emotion. To most people, it might have sounded like a harmless remark. But to Meryl, it was a deep insult. She once said, "An accent isn't technique, it's biography." And to imply otherwise, in her eyes, was nothing less than a betrayal of the real people she sought to honor through her performances. From that moment, a line was drawn. Irons thought Streep was too self-indulgent and obsessed with control. Streep, on the other hand, saw him as emotionally hollow and distant. Every scene between them became a quiet duel, their gazes sharp, their energy cold, their chemistry fraying under invisible tension. Crew members later said they had never seen two actors stand so close and yet feel so far apart. So when we talk about Jeremy Irons, he isn't just the second name on the list. He represents the moment admiration turned into contempt, a tragedy where two immense talents could have made history, but instead left behind nothing but silence. But the storm didn't end there. The next name in Meryl Streep's hidden feud list shocked Hollywood even more: Alec Baldwin. No one expected a romantic comedy like It's Complicated to turn into a battlefield. But when Meryl Streep faced Alec Baldwin on set, the sparks between them didn't ignite chemistry, they exploded. Director Nancy Meyers believed Baldwin's improvisational charm would balance Streep's meticulous precision. But it backfired. While Streep dissected every layer of Jane Adler's emotions with surgical precision, Baldwin tore through takes like a wrecking ball, changing lines, tossing in jokes, and rewriting the rhythm without warning. To Streep, this chaos destroyed the emotional core of the film. "Comedy has to be grounded in truth," she once said, exasperated after a ruined rehearsal. Baldwin disagreed, insisting that truth only emerges in the heat of the moment. Neither would bend. Every shared scene became a tug-of-war, order versus chaos, discipline versus instinct. Even now, Baldwin laughs off the tension in interviews. But Streep, she's never softened. Kevin Kline was the wound that never healed. Jeremy Irons was the scar that burned with time. But Alec Baldwin, he was the spark that ignited Meryl Streep's quiet fury. On screen, audiences once dreamed of seeing Meryl Streep and Jack Nicholson share a frame, two icons, two living legends. But that moment never came, and not because Hollywood didn't try, it was because Meryl Streep never agreed. Since the late 1970s, studios had been desperate to pair them in major dramas, convinced that two giants like Streep and Nicholson would guarantee box office glory. Yet time and again, every discussion fell apart.
Why?
Because to Meryl, acting was a moral duty, while to Jack, it was swagger and instinct, a game of charisma rather than craft. She would spend months researching, studying dialects, and disappearing into her characters. Meanwhile, Nicholson once scoffed in an interview, saying, "Preparation? That's intellectual masturbation." To Streep, those words were a knife to the heart. Authenticity was sacred to her, and hearing him mock it publicly made any collaboration impossible. Casting director Juliet Taylor once summed it up bluntly: "Jack represents everything Meryl thinks is wrong with stardom." From that point on, any project with his name attached was quietly vetoed. At award shows, they exchanged polite nods. At galas, their body language froze the air. Everyone in Hollywood knew, two of its brightest stars would never share the same screen, not for lack of opportunity, but because contempt had built a wall too high to climb. But if Jack Nicholson embodied the style Meryl despised, then Gwyneth Paltrow became the face of everything she resented. To Meryl, Gwyneth wasn't just another actress. She was the symbol of modern Hollywood's decay: privilege over passion, image over authenticity. The daughter of Blythe Danner and Bruce Paltrow, Gwyneth seemed to glide through doors others spent years trying to open. Her rise was effortless, her fame instant, and to Meryl, it was infuriating. For decades, Streep treated acting as sacred labor: months of preparation, total immersion, complete surrender to the role. Watching Paltrow soar to the top through timing and family connections felt like an insult to everything she believed in. The breaking point came in 1999. Gwyneth Paltrow won the Oscar for Shakespeare in Love, while Meryl was nominated the same year for One True Thing, one of her most demanding, heartfelt performances. On stage, she smiled graciously. But behind the scenes, close friends later revealed Meryl's quiet fury. She allegedly called that year's race a marketing campaign dressed up as an award. She never said Gwyneth's name aloud, but no one doubted who she meant. And from that moment on, between them stood a silence thick with disdain. Jack Nicholson was the man she couldn't respect. Gwyneth Paltrow, the woman she couldn't forgive. And with that, the image of Hollywood's untouchable icon, the woman who never hated anyone, finally shattered. When asked which young actresses she admired, Meryl Streep always mentioned Cate Blanchett, Amy Adams, and Jessica Chastain, performers known for their intense preparation and disciplined craft. But one name was never on her lips: Gwyneth Paltrow. Industry insiders noticed it. At award shows, their eye contact lasted a second, their smiles were brief, polite, but cold. And years later, nothing had changed. While Paltrow built her glossy lifestyle empire with Goop, Streep kept her distance, not seeing her as a rival, but as a warning about the hollow fame of modern Hollywood. One stood for legacy and artistry, the other for celebrity and branding. And between them stretched a gulf too wide to cross. But none of those rivalries compared to the deepest wound of Meryl Streep's career, the one named Dustin Hoffman. The moment that defined their fallout happened right in front of the camera, but it wasn't in the script. During the filming of Kramer vs. Kramer, 1979, Hoffman suddenly slapped Meryl Streep across the face, without warning, without consent. It wasn't acting. It was humiliation disguised as spontaneity. And Streep never forgot it. To her, acting was built on trust. Every gesture, every pause, every emotion created together with mutual respect. But Hoffman, a devoted method actor, believed in chaos. He blurred the line between character and reality, throwing in unpredictable actions in pursuit of authenticity. For Streep, that wasn't authenticity, it was abuse. Years later, she admitted, that was overstepping. That was not acting. Simple words, but heavy with the weight of a wound that never healed. On set, director Robert Benton became more referee than filmmaker, constantly mediating between Hoffman's explosive improvisation and Streep's meticulous precision. Their divorce story felt painfully real, not just because of the script, but because their real resentment bled into every scene. The film swept the Oscars. Hoffman won Best Actor. Streep took home Best Supporting Actress. The world saw brilliance. But Meryl walked away with scars. She never worked with Hoffman again. In later interviews, she put it plainly, professionally, it was productive. Personally, it was intolerable. 6 actors. 6 grudges. And not a single one forgiven. Which story shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more untold Hollywood rivalries.